Hi, my name is Tristan. I'm going to give a short presentation on the RUP model. So to start off, RUP is an agile software development method. And agile is basically a manifesto of 12 principles or values that, like, following those 12 principles supposedly and probably will make your software better. So like some of these principles are like customer satisfaction, early and continuous delivery of software, and frequent delivery of software, teamwork and face-to-face team interaction, welcoming changing requirements, and using software production as a measure of progress. So RUP has an iterative life cycle, and it's frequently described as having two kind of dimensions, like a time dimension and a process dimension, which is usually described vertically. And so the time dimension is divided into 4 phases. So like inception, elaboration, construction, transition. So inception and elaboration are basically planning phases. Inception is more like risk management, expected costs, and like assessment of viability. Whereas elaboration is more of like project plan development and requirement assessment. But they both do, like the inception phase does do a little bit of like UML and documentation like that. So anyway, the construction phase is where the software system is built in its entirety. And the transition phase is where that software is given to the client, and the client is shown how to use it. So the process dimensions, so the reason it's aligned vertically and horizontally is because the process dimensions all happen during each phase, each of the 4 time phases. So it's just the processes happen to different extents, the processes within the process dimension. So like one of the activities is modeling or planning, which is just modeling your software to meet your customer's needs. Requirements assessment, analysis and design, which is basically designing the system to what it's going to look like when it's done. Implementation, which is constructing it, testing, and then application, which is releasing it to the user and teaching the user how to use it. So advantages of the RUP model, one is that it makes strong use of UML to plan out the production process, and this will just make your software engineers more efficient and effective. It enhances team productivity, and this is probably due to agile. It's the planning in UML that's done during the inception and elaboration phases. The emphasis of integration of software modules throughout the development process is another advantage, and it's a principle of agile. So then implementation of agile is another advantage, and it just makes developers more efficient and effective. Another advantage is that it's very good when it comes to adjusting to changing requirements. That an agile principle is we welcome changing requirements, and requirements analysis happens during each of the 4 time phases. So the RUP model is very good at sort of adjusting to requirements. Emphasis on the need for accurate documentation is another advantage, and that happens during the inception and elaboration phases. Some disadvantages are that the process is complex and therefore requires a team of experts to implement it. It's kind of like if someone who's never done it before can't predict what's going to happen. I know this from my capstone project. It's hard to predict what kinds of changes are going to need to be made, and so having experience and expertise is an advantage for that. Disadvantage is it's difficult to implement for small teams and small projects. There's a lot to be done with RUP. A lot of documentation, a lot of testing, a lot of software delivery. So it's just, for small teams, it's just not really possible, maybe. But on cutting edge projects, the reuse of already made components might not be possible. That's another disadvantage. And this can make you less effective and efficient. Another disadvantage is the development process can easily get disorganized. And, this is just, again, because there's so much going on, so much planning, so much changing of requirements, so much production of software, so much testing. So it can get disorganized. Another disadvantage is that there's a big emphasis on planning and documentation that could be time consuming if it's done too much. So especially for like a small development team, they're just trying to spend so much time on planning, and documentation just probably is not a good idea. So When to use it. So one time to use it is when there are time and budget constraints, and this is because during the inception phase, you assess these things. You assess, how long it might take, the budget that you expect it to have. So another time to use it is when there's changing requirements, and like I said, in each time phase, the process dimension happens. So requirements assessment gets done to some degree in each of the 4 phases, over and over. When your team, another time to use is when your team has experience working on the project and experts are good at planning, again, because something that complex takes good planning and people who can predict what kinds of things might happen. So expertise if you have experts on your team, that's a good time to use it. Another good time to use it is when you're not working on a small team, and like I've already talked about, like if a small team, like there's a lot of tasks in RUP for a team to handle. So a small team is going to have a more difficult time handling that many planning kinds of activities. So, and then another time to use RUP is when your project is high risk. So like there's a risk assessment that's done in the inception phase. And so like the RUP accounts for risk basically, and it does it once every cycle at least. So yeah, thanks for watching.